this process. It doesn't happen in council chambers. You'll be asked to leave. So please keep that in mind. We want to keep this in order. So thank you very much. Just one attendee, Councillor Powell, unfortunately is ill, and we send our thoughts and prayers to Councillor Powell and his family at this time. Approval of the agenda, the addendum in items added to the agenda, please. Councillor Coleman, seconded by Councillor Pierce. Questions, concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Please have declaration of pecuniary interest at the appropriate time. First of all, it's my privilege under item 4A, through a close friend of mine, Chief Superintendent John Kane, Ontario Provincial Police Western Regional Commander Anderson, as the next commander of the Brant County OPP. Inspector Anderson was chosen after a thorough evaluation process by the OPP Command and Civil Governance Partners. Chief Superintendent Kane wishes to thank members of the Police Services Board for their participation in the selection of Ms. Anderson. And would you please step forward and come to the podium, please, Ms. Anderson? On behalf of this council, we welcome you to the council chambers, and please say a few words on your behalf.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is certainly a full house tonight. I don't know if I was expecting this, so I don't think you're all here for me. I think I'm a surprise. So I do have some words, so I think all of you are going to be sitting here for a few minutes and listening to those. So I apologize. I'm holding you up from your other agenda points here, but I am very privileged to be here tonight to talk to everyone and thoroughly appreciate the opportunity. So I would like to take a few minutes just to provide you with some information, about my police background and my experience, my priorities that I see as a detachment commander coming into Brant County, and as well as what I want to achieve and what I'm looking at in the first 6 months. So the start of my position here in Brant County, which will be September 3rd, actually coincides almost to the day to my 25th year with the OPP. I joined the OPP in 1994 after graduating from post-secondary education. My interest in policing was actually spurred back in high school, and it was when I was named as a recipient of the Jack Ross Memorial Award. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with that. He was an officer, an OPP, in Oxford County, who was killed in the line of duty. Receiving an award in memory of a fallen OPP officer, even in my teenage years, it was incredibly impactful and humbling for me. After graduating from university, I immediately applied to the OPP and found myself at the Ontario Police College very shortly thereafter, at 22 years old. I was very young. Since 1994, my career has been equally spread between frontline policing, crime, and specialized services in policing. As a frontline officer, I've worked in both general law enforcement and traffic detachments. I've been a frontline supervisor, traffic sergeant, detachment operations manager, and detachment command. Within crime, I've worked in Organized Crime Enforcement Bureau, the Provincial Auto Theft Team, the Provincial Asset Forfeiture Unit. That's where we get to take the toys from people that don't play nice in our society. It was a very good unit to be in for the time that I was there. In relation to specialized services, I was a member of the Provincial Emergency Response Team. I was in Professional Standards Bureau for a number of years and a coordinator of wiretap investigations with our Technical Support Bureau. Currently, my position is Regional Traffic Manager for West Region of the OPP. I'm also incident command trained, and I'm one of 6 SIU, the Special Investigation Unit liaison officers for West Region. For the better part of 2018, I was also the interim detachment commander in your neighboring county, Norfolk County, since December of last year. When I'm not working, for those of you that are hockey parents can understand my comments here, I can be found in any multitude of hockey arenas in southwestern Ontario with my 2 children, including the Brant Sportsplex here, which seems to be the latest of gracious hosts for my daughter's team. so I appreciate the hospitality. It's a fantastic complex. More than half of my policing career has been in frontline policing, providing police services to communities and the citizens of Ontario. Throughout my career, there are 4 things that I've identified as my personal and professional priorities to the communities that I police: professionalism, accountability, mutual respect, and strong community relationships. As a detachment commander, I expect professional and accountable policing service delivery from myself and all of our members. In return, I hope for high community involvement and engagement, a community that takes opportunities as they arise to take ownership for their own part in community safety. As reported in the Paris Star recently, Brant County reports a 20% decrease in violent crime year-to-date over 2018. However, across the province, 25 to 85% of their calls for service are linked to social disorder, being mental health, addictions, and other sources, rather than actual law enforcement duties. These numbers are based on the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police Collaborative Working Group with their risk-driven community safety report. And this is why mutual accountability is imperative moving forward into the future of community safety. In order to have mutual accountability for public safety, we must have mutual respect and strong relationships between the police, the community, and all of our community support services. This is one of my priorities I've identified within the first 6 months of my time in Brant. I want to get out in our community and meet the people who I am looking most forward to working with in Brant County. I want to seek community input and further programs that develop relationships, not only between myself, but our officers and the community. I want to further the fantastic work that has been done to date in Brant for mental health crisis teams and support the new community mobilization and engagement officer in our community. I want to fully support the community street crimes unit and do what I can to further their already tremendous results within the community. I look forward to transitioning to a new OPP facility and working with the Police Services Board and Council to ensure we maintain a high visibility and presence down here in Paris. I want to develop relationships with our media partners. As one of my esteemed media officers, I won't say it was in Norfolk County, he quoted, "There isn't anything that can't be solved when the police, the community, and the media work together." Although there's a few double negatives in there for those English majors in the crowd, it is a statement that's verbatim, and in that form, it's perfectly said. I want to have a high media presence personally and through our media officer to ensure the community, is aware of all of the great work our officers are doing. I see my role as a detachment commander as a liaison. That's a liaison between the community, our officers, council, the Police Services Board, and all community support services to ensure professional, accountable police services are delivered to Brant County, and to take an equal seat at the table with all of these partners to ensure community safety remains our top priority for all of us. Thank you again, and my apologies for holding everyone up to get to the matters that are at hand, but I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to council and so many more people in the community that I was not expecting to be here. So thank you very much, and all the best with the rest of your meeting. Thank you.
And thank you, Inspector Anderson. We look forward to you starting on September 3rd. I know council here is very pleased that you're here with us, and I know staff is as well, and we look forward to working together.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving forward, yes, please, Your Worship.
I beg leave to say a few words on behalf of council. So much thank you for coming to Brant, and we received word, as you said, that Inspector Lisa Anderson had been appointed here, and it's my privilege on behalf of Brant County Council to extend a very warm and cordial invitation to Inspector Anderson, and thanking you for coming to Brant. We look forward to your service, knowing there will be great service, and we do appreciate you outlining your views, and I will acknowledge that important statement that there isn't anything that cannot be solved if we work at it. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you on behalf of council and the citizens of Brant County Council.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moving along, 4B, Mr. Brad Totten, permit fees for fill placement. Is he here to, please come forward, sir, to the podium. State your name and your address, please.
Brad Totten, 361 Scenic Drive, St. George, Ontario.
Thank you.
So I guess I'm here tonight to find out, I've spent the last couple months getting a permit for some work at my property from the Grand River Conservation and the Ministry of Natural Resource to bring in some fill from 24 Highway. So a week ago I got the permit to go ahead and do this. The people that are going to give me the fill called and said that now there's a new law or whatever you want to call it at Brant County that I have to get in touch with them about what I'm doing. And when I did that, I found out that they require another permit. So I would like someone to explain to me why I would need two permits, two levels of government to do the same job. So can someone explain what that's all about?
Yes, certainly, sir. Is there any questions or concerns from committee first before we go and ask the question? Seeing none. Mr. Pomponi, would you be able to answer that for us, please, sir?
Sure. The first permit, which is the GRCA permit, it deals with approvals under their legislation to look at impacts on environmentally sensitive areas and hazard lands, floodplains. The area that is in question is entirely within the regulated area by the Grand River Conservation Authority, and it's their mandate, and we certainly partner with them and have a memo of understanding to do that work. The second one is the fill permit. That's the new legislation that came down from the province to deal with importing and of fill material from different sites. As council will recall in our budget update last year that we brought forward with a position to look at fill and site alteration within the County of Brant. That's legislation that came down to the province. We look at it for different areas. We certainly don't look at it for the environmental impacts, but we look at it for things such as lock grading, drainage, impact on this on the municipal rights of ways, filling in the rights of ways, and things of that nature. And council certainly set up a fee structure that was put in place through the budget to recoup those costs for doing that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pomponi. Sir, do you have any questions pertaining to that answer?
Well, yeah, like, I don't understand why I should have to pay. I've already got one permit to do this work. I'm fully in tune with the conservation area. I've been working in this woodlot and conservation land for 35 years, looking after this place. And that's the first people I went to when I wanted to do this job. But now having to buy another $500 permit to bring in 15 loads of fill, and this fill from the highway, I can get paperwork from the MTO. This fill has been all tested. It's grade A fill, it's not polluted. And I really don't see why. I'm trying to do the community a favor by looking after this property, growing trees, which is supposed to be good for the environment, doing all my share. I've done this for years on my time and my money, and now all of a sudden I got to pay another $500 to do this work. I don't feel that it's being treated fairly, and I really don't understand why there would be any incentive to bother doing these things if all you're going to do is be penalized for it. So that's why I'm here tonight, hoping that I could get this permit waived and let me carry on with this little project that I'm doing.
Thank you, sir. Any councilors' comments, questions? Mayor Eddy, please.
The answer to this is to provide the applicant with the information relative. That means the legislation passed by GRCA, which is not a level of government, the legislation they use and the legislation we use, and perhaps both are appealable, and the citizen has the right, in my view, to appeal it. And now he's requesting, in a sense, that it be appealed. That's the way he's looking at it, and that would come before both bodies. But both bodies have legislation from the dear province of Ontario under which they operate, and that's why the dual. And this is in place in many areas of the province of Ontario.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I agree with what you're saying there. There is a government enforced that came in, I guess, Rob or Mark, how long ago did this come in?
June, apparently.
June of this year? So it's a new mandate by the province that they're requesting this to make sure that the soil coming into the area is the good soil for the area, my understanding is. So if you wish, sir, we could get you the documentation to appeal something like this, I'm sure through Mr. Pomponi's office, or we could get you the right connection how to do that.
Okay.
Okay, sir?
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Gatward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Totten, perhaps you're not aware, but in the past we've had many companies coming from the GTA and even downtown Toronto coming to our county and dumping fill in our county without permission, without testing. It could be highly toxic. It could be polluting our groundwater and our farmland. And so the county felt we had to do something to protect our water, our resources here. And I was very happy to hear, Mr. Totten, that the fill you are receiving has been tested by MTO and isn't polluted. So thank you for that.
Yes, Councillor Simons, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To you, the presenter. Mr. Totten, you mentioned the GRCA permit. Have you been to the GRCA to ask forgiveness for your costing? And if not, you...
No, because I'm not asking for the Grand River to forgive the cost. They've come out to my property, two different people. They've looked everything over. They, at that time, said they don't see anything wrong with what I'm doing, but it would have to go to their meeting, which it did. Then from there, it went to that, which is even more money than the Grand River Conservation. And I understand the concerns about this fill that's coming in. To my way of thinking, if they want to make a law that you can't transport this kind of stuff and dump it anywhere, then everybody in the business that's transporting it should know the laws and be fined for doing it. I don't see why I have to pay $500 for a permit when all your concerns are included in this permit from the Grand River Conservation. So I'm paying twice, more than twice, to do a little project.
Send them to the appropriate authorities and have a hearing on it to see if you can get the fees waived on that. Unfortunately, the county itself can't do it. It has to come from the province to be able to do that because they're the ones who initiated the act. So we can't do it ourselves here. It would have to go to the province to get it done. Is that not correct, Mr. Bradley?
So in other words, if it's got to go to the province, this could take till next year.
I can't speak on behalf of the province.
Well, I've been 2.5 months just dealing in my own town. By the time we get this all settled, there's not going to be any free dirt. So, I don't know if I'll continue with it or not, but I just don't feel that.
Mr. Pomponi, could you work with this gentleman on that, please? Sure. Thank you. We'll do the best we can, sir, to support you on this. Any other questions from committee? Seeing none? Thank you, sir, for your presentation. Moving along to Mr. James Graber, Paris Links Road West and Area Residents Group, Grand River Street North Environmental Assessment. Mr. Graber, please.
Just push down to go forward. Make sure you're speaking the mic.
I didn't state at the beginning, every presenter has 10 minutes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Carty and councilors of the Corporate Development Committee. My name is Jim Graber, and I'm here tonight representing the Paris Links Road West and Area Residents Group west of the Paris Grand Estates development and a growing number of Paris residents who are petitioning against a plan to destroy a landmark rail corridor upon which the community of Paris was founded. These residents are also petitioning against the technically preferred Paris Links Road Alignment Alternative 6 that will significantly increase the traffic load onto Grand River Street North corridor. Why are we here? The Paris Links Road West Area Residents Group, with 200-plus members and petitioners, was formed June the 3rd, 2018, in response to the Class Environmental Assessment, also known as the EA, at the Public Information Center 1, known as PIC 1, presentation on May the 24th, 2018. Many residents were unaware of the PIC 1 until a couple of days before it occurred. Further, very few have been contacted about the EA Community Cafe held December the 7th, 2017. Those that attended the EA Community Cafe on December the 7th, 2017 were unaware of any discussion regarding an EA study extension proposal or discussion. Most of the group only became aware of the EA study extension at the May 24th, 2018 PIC 1. Many of the area residents did not attend the EA PIC 1 because they were unaware of any issues regarding road alignment alternatives that would impact them. When we started on June the 3rd, 2018, very few of us knew each other, but it was apparent that we shared the same concerns. By including others through our petitioning activities and open dialogue on the streets of North Paris, our group has grown tenfold. When we come back to present our final thoughts to Council on August the 28th, 2018, we will provide our signed petitions so you know that it is not just a few unhappy residents with personal concerns, excuse me, but a large cohesive group from all over the community. We need only to point you to the Brant County Council meeting of April the 24th, 2018, the Grand River Corridor Staff Report, where the Class EA took on a life of its own and put us all on the defensive. It is only because of the strength of our resolve that we are here again on your terms to separate the issues so that you can focus on what is being said within the guidelines of your committee structures. We are here tonight to do three things. First, clarify our position with respect to the questions and comments made at the June 26, 2018 Brant County Council meeting and the August 3rd, 2018 Planning Advisory Committee meeting. Secondly, identify our concerns about how the Class EA is being conducted. And third, to provide the Corporate Development Committee with a clear understanding of our objectives. To address our first agenda item, it is important to know the following. We understand the difficulties surrounding the LPAT settlement agreement. We understand the need for following provincial guidelines for growth and housing. We are not opposed to the development. And yes, we want an Eastern Bypass Bridge too. To address our second agenda item, the following is a summary of a portion of our presentation delivered to the Chairman of the Planning Advisory Committee, the County Administrators, and the consulting engineer for the Grand River Street North Class EA on August 7, 2018. A copy of the full presentation has been provided to Council that further outlines these concerns in detail. The following are our concerns about how the Class EA has been conducted. The lack of productive outreach to the community as evidenced by untimely notification, as many of the participants who did attend left because it was so crowded, poorly organized, and very difficult to be heard or to move from table to table. It did not follow the guidelines for a World Cafe, which specifies not more than 4 to 5 at a table. Lack of enhanced communication between decision-making processes of the County of Brant Council and its citizens is evidenced by altering the focus of the community cafe meeting to arrive at an outcome that was not the proposed purpose of the meeting. As taken from the YouTube and stated by a Ward 3 councillor on April the 24th, 2018, Brant County Council meeting, the night was advertised looking at Grand River Street from Watts Pond Road to St. Patrick Street. The consultant said he would put this all together and come back in April and there will be a public meeting. And then all of a sudden, the engineering firm or consultant skipped over that, asked for more money to extend the study. With no recorded votes, no show of hands, just taking a group of people with random ideas, the consultant should come back to the public, not the staff, and explain what happened at the community cafe and have an open discussion. Lack of productive use of information technology to inform and engage citizens, evidenced by documents not posted on the public website until repeated requests were made, including the Transportation Extended Study of April the 7th, 2018, not posted until July the 5th, the Natural Environment Site Overview Technical Memorandum of May the 2018, not posted or available. The Community Cafe Summary Report of January the 2018 received August the 1st, still not posted on the website. A lack of communication. Study criteria reports were written using technical language, making it difficult for the general public to understand. Errors in the study and emails with the consulting engineer with respect to dates and in obtaining documents made it difficult for the public to follow the process. The changing terms of reference and timeline between the Class EA and the LPAT agreement also made it difficult for the public to follow. To address our third agenda item, at the meeting you asked us for an alternate plan, but before we can develop a plan, we had to set up certain criteria. The criteria are as follows. Number 1, protect the Great Western Corridor along its length from the Paris Junction to the Grand River crossing on West River Road for a linked trail as part of the Natural Heritage Linkage Strategy for Abandoned Rail Corridors. Protect all of the established residential areas on both sides of the Paris Grand Estates development. 3, protect the remaining green space to the north of the corridor. 4, establish the established residential road infrastructure from being utilized as a collector road for the new settlement. 5, reduce the impact of the Grand River Street North Corridor without threat of expropriation. 5, reduce the impact to the 6, provide safety to areas, schools, businesses, and retirement facilities. 7, align a solution with a future bypass bridge in accordance with the Transportation Master Plan in order to sustain the long-term viability of the Paris settlement. 8, maintain the integrity of the Brant County Community Vision. For those in attendance that may be unaware, the Brant County Community Vision clearly states the need to protect the agricultural, natural, social, and architectural heritage of the County of Brant was strongly voiced during the visioning process. Further, highlighted in red are areas where the EA process is not aligned with the Brant County Community Vision. The objectives within the key performance area were written as follows. Enhanced communication between the decision-making processes of County of Brant Council and the citizens of the county. Productive use of information technology to inform and engage citizens, including the County of Brant website and social media. Frequent and productive outreach to the community, including meetings and dialogue sessions being held throughout the County of Brant. and County of Brant policies, processes, documents, and mandates expressed in a more consumable and understandable format. Finally, prior to delivering our thoughts on a proposed alternative on August the 28th, 2018 to what is recommended in the Class EA, we would like confirmation that this committee or the present council, one, has the authority to modify the Trails Master Plan, and two, the authority to expand the class environmental assessment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graber, for your thorough presentation. We do appreciate it. Thank you very much. You have some good concerns there. Any questions or comments by the committee? Councilor Miller, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question to the presenter. We got a lot of the material.
I'm sorry?
We got a lot of material in our package tonight. I guess maybe this is from a previous presentation. And one of the original concerns, it says regarding alt number 6, it says loss of right-of-way access to our backyard. I don't understand that. Are you saying the rail corridor is cutting through properties?
I have no idea what you're speaking to. It's not from us. Not from me, anyway.
It's from the Paris Links Road West Area Resident Group.
I didn't write that, sir. Can I see the document?
Can you show me the top one?
Thank you. I'm sorry for that. Yeah, this was in a presentation, and one of the people in our group did speak to this. And I think there is some concern that there may be something to do with a backyard, but it's only one issue.
Okay, but can you explain that issue? Because I do not understand that.
Oh, I cannot explain it. It was explained at the meeting, but I'm only one spokesman, but I'm sure if someone else would like to come up and speak, that's not a problem. I'm only one of 5, and I think this is one of the other spokespersons, sir.
Any other questions? Councillor Simons, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Graber, thank you for the presentation. I did say at the council meeting, I did ask you for another solution for your group to come up with. You've made it very clear you don't want the rail trail to be utilized as a road. So my question to your group is, have you come up with a solution that would be better to fit the needs of the residents concerned? And when you do, or if you have, would you be able to present that to staff so that they could possibly incorporate it into the EA study for further investigation?
Yes, I think that's what, I'm sorry. Okay. Yes, I think that's what we're, a very defined way, and that's what is our intent on August the 28th. We were going to come back as a delegation with some ideas.
And if I may say, Mr. Chair, I don't think the EA study process would eliminate you from being part of it. I think our staff and the EA process consultants would be very willing to take your suggestions. So there's not a close-off time, I wouldn't think.
I understand that, and I won't dispute that maybe things will change, but the delivery so far has not been really in a consultative way. I think even in our meeting with 5 or 6 people with the county management team, we still felt that the consultant really didn't have a wide scope. But perhaps if we come back on the 28th with something conclusive that everybody's interested in, then maybe we'll put that forward. Exactly.
And I just want to make one more further last comment, and that is that council and the County of Brant staff were not perfect. So we are trying to make the best out of a solution that's really playing havoc with a lot of people, and we're trying to come up with the best solution possible. So that's what it's all about, working together and making a good solution. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mayor Eddy, please.
Would a report in response to your 10 or objection?
Excuse me, Your Worship, could you turn your microphone on, please? Thank you.
Usually my voice carries. Would a response from the council, and I think it would because you've asked it, that a staff report to council pointing out where we went wrong, why we went wrong, if we went wrong, and how that could be rectified. Would that would that satisfy your inquiry about the 10 core objections? Because there are many things here, and I'm the first to admit that the planning process in Ontario is a mess. There are many, many complaints by many municipalities who are just wild about, but we must live by the Provincial Planning Act and the assessment, the other acts that are involved with it. But we must make sure that the requests of applicants are being dealt with, first of all, efficiently and completely, and that our people have the opportunity to understand those questions and the answers there too. But it seems to me that we're at a point now where our council, and I realize we're not in council, we include all council members, need additional information so that we can supply you and the citizens of the area and all of Brant County with answers that this is how it works, this is how it doesn't work. So we need to do that, I believe. Would that suffice to your objections that are listed, which are so important at this meeting?
Yeah, definitely. The objections, we still need answers on those, but
Yes, sir.
I think we're also, because we've been here twice with similar objections, that we have learned quite a bit too of the processes.
Yes.
And, basically we got caught off guard when this started in May the 24th. We're only 2 months past that and did not understand exactly how this is all separated within the county. But they somehow got tied together in the LPAT agreement, and that's where it became very complex for us. But I think we do understand that now, and that's why we've come to the planning committee and to this committee here to unseparate those, and that way we can come back to county with something that makes some sense.
I see.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Pierce, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Graber. A comment and then a question, if I could. First of all, where it says our position with respect to questions made, absolutely, that's fabulous. You guys understand that, as was stated, some of the decisions that were made were not decisions made by council, the provincially mandated decisions that were pushed upon us. And it's fantastic you're not opposed to development. That's great, because it is coming. We can't stop it, as we all know. My question is, to your fourth point there, we want an eastern bypass bridge. I'm sure as far as citizens in this town, a lot of us want an eastern bypass bridge. A question to you, do you have any idea how much an eastern bypass bridge would cost, number one, and how long that process would take, number two?
I'm sorry. Okay. I have a rough idea, and that's why I'm a bit confused by the dialogue about the bridge. Been hearing about a bridge myself personally since the 70s, maybe even before. And definitely heard about it again in the 90s, and now we're here again talking about the same thing. And with all the growth around, it still seems like we need a bridge, right? I also, because of where I came from in my experience, I know the cost of things, I think. And a bridge isn't going to happen. I'm sure if you drop a pencil on a piece of paper today, you're going to be years before this evolves. But that's exactly what's in the back of our mind too. In our draft ideas that we've spoken with the spokespersons, my feeling is that there's an alternative that may include a bridge someday, but you should be prepared for that if it does need to be done and there's money available. but that day is maybe not here, obviously, for this county. And I realize, too, there's multi-levels of government involved in trying to secure the funding and so on and so forth. So I don't think we have any personal expectations that a bridge is going to happen next year or even in the next 5 or 10 years. It takes time, that I understand, but that's why we feel that there still is another alternate plan here that could do exactly what I stated in those last 8 points, you know, to protect everything that's already there and encompass the vision. Brant County vision. That's what we're attempting to do. These aren't really our words. These are the words that were put on they're on the county website, right?
Okay, and I appreciate your response there, but what you gave us tonight is a package from you. These are your words that you chose to come in and speak to us tonight about. The picture that Councillor Miller was talking about earlier, that is in your package that you brought to us. It may have been not yourself, but it is part of your group, okay?
Which are you speaking to?
Excuse me, I have the floor right now. Thank you. Okay? So the words you're bringing to us and the pictures you're bringing to us are in your package that we received tonight. This is a huge package. I'm not quite sure, you talk about transparency, I'm not quite sure why we didn't receive this package a week ago. Because I'm sure the information that is in here, you had handily ready a week ago, which would have given us time to read through it. Because what we're trying to do is get ourselves up to speed on your information that's coming in your package. Some of it we have seen before, some of it we may not have. And we want to also pay attention to delegations that is up there when you're speaking and previous presenters are speaking, so we don't want to be reading it at that time. Okay? So I'm going from words taken from your presentation and pictures taken from your presentation that you brought to us and asking you questions about it. Okay? And I feel that you need to be prepared to answer the questions as we need to be prepared to answer questions when they come to us. And I feel you've been asked 2 questions tonight in this thing, pretty easy questions. The one you said, oh, it's not mine, it's somebody else's. And the second one, which I've heard out of your mouth several times at that podium about a bridge. Just so everybody is aware, that bridge is $30 million plus, number one. $30 million plus to build a bridge. And if we were to start it today, like you said, with a pencil, you're talking 15, 20 years to get that bridge. Well, I'm guaranteeing you one thing, the province isn't going to wait 15, 20 years to build the houses that are coming. So you talk about alternate suggestions and stuff like that. Councillor Simons has asked you twice that I'm aware of when you were at that podium. Bring your suggestions here. You keep telling us you're going to bring them. Now it's on the 28th. So I guess we'll have to wait till the 28th to understand what your suggestions are. We've been saying all along, if you don't like this suggestion, it's quite clear you don't like the suggestion with the support you have with this, then bring another alternative to the table. Thank you.
Was that a question?
You answered my questions earlier. Thank you, sir.
Any other comments or
Can
questions?
I respond to him?
Sure you can.
I think it's worth clearing the air. We're not here to fight tonight.
Nobody said you were.
Oh. We're here simply to make a statement that we're trying to get a unified voice amongst this community. We're going to come back with an idea on the 28th. You don't want the idea, that's fine. I don't think it's really our job to plan this. We came here with objections to what you're doing, what was proposed. That's all we did. This is our right to object and resist. This is how we do it. This is, I believe, how it works. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're absolutely correct.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
gentlemen,
Now-
thank you. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. A small detail in that presentation, let's go back to what you two have been talking about. That presentation was put on only 1 week ago. We didn't have the time to prepare it. We don't have time to prepare what I'm doing tonight. This presentation was put together very quickly so that we could talk to the 5 individuals, but of which there were supposed to be 5, and we ended up with 8. And those were the county rules that were dictated by the CAO's office. And all we did is we put some ideas on the table in front of the EA, the consulting engineer. As for me knowing every single detail, that's a pretty minor thing. But one of the things you need to understand, I have 2 feet of documentation that I have been reviewing. It's a very complex issue. Absolutely. And we can't even get all the documentation. That's another complex issue. A lot of these documents show up that have been written supposedly written in January, and they show up just 2 weeks ago, and they're still not on the county website. The problem here is this. There's a lack of communication. You have to understand that. We never knew from the beginning what was going on. And you only have to go to the YouTube video. You should look at this. Go back to the YouTube video and look what was going on in the dialogue on April the 24th. It is just, for us, it's just bizarre that this got all imposed with us without coming to any consultation with any of the group. And they just got forced down our throat. And that's why we're here to defend this. Now, we are willing to work with you, we really are.
Perfect.
And we're going to try and encompass those 8 critical points. Yeah, I don't think if we can't do those 8 points, we probably won't have a plan to come back to you with. And it's that simple. And I apologize that I can't answer Councillor Miller's specific detail about somebody's backyard. I believe that's already been addressed with the environmental assessment engineer.
That's fine, Mr. Graber. That's
Okay.
fine.
Thank you.
That's okay. One thing we all have to realize here as a town of Paris in a community of the county of Brant, this will be one of the biggest projects in this town's history that will affect the most people in this town, which is part of the county of Brant. None of us in this room, including the councilors or Mr. Graber, Mr. Bradley or Mr. Wheat, asked for any of this. But we've taken it on because we are your representatives, and it's our job to make sure we can do the best for this county. This is new to a lot of us. None of us are engineers. We have to work with our staff who are engineers. We have a lot of ideas we have to work with. It's not going to happen overnight. But we want to hear from the people of this community because we are your representatives. We need your input. There's no question about it. Staff, on the other hand, has to work with rules and regulations from the province and the federal government. That's their duty to do that. So we can take ideas to them and they can give us answers, yes or no, it can or cannot be done. So all of us need to work together on this, hand in hand, because like I said, the last big, huge thing that affected this town was moving from Upper Town, putting the downtown in and going north. Grand River Street. This is going to be a change for our community. And I hope for all of us, it's a good change that allows people to circumvent the downtown area if they don't want to go down there and get around our community freely without having to wait 15 and 20 minutes. And that's what we're dealing with right now. So we're doing our best as councilors and staff to work on this to get this done for you. So please bear with us. We'll bear with everything that comes this way and we'll work on it as well. But we really appreciate the feedback as councilors and as staff. They look at it from the technical side. We look at it from the general person side who, as most of us, don't have that background. So we're all trying to work together. And like I say, this is all new for a lot of us. So we really appreciate your feedback and getting that feedback and just work with us on it. It's not going to happen overnight. One thing, Mr. Graber, I'd like to mention, and I'm sure you know this already, that Great Western Rail area, and yes, Councillor, I'll get to you in a second, that Great Western Rail area isn't even owned by the county. That's owned by Dufferin Aggregates. We don't own that. So we can't do anything anyways, even if we could right now. Councillor Wheat and then Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you, reminding Mr. Graber, because I was going to bring this up as a chuckle, but this could be very serious. Dufferin owns the rail trail. 40 years ago, that's how they wanted to transport the gravel. What if they come back on board and want to do that again, and you got a rail trail, or a railway trail instead of a rail trail, walking trail? That's just something else to upset your stomach. But just put that in the back of your mind too, that potential exists with Dufferin because they own that property. And that possibility exists and they might want to truck their gravel by rail again, because things change. So you could have train tracks behind your house instead of a walking trail, just changing the terms of the word trail.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Chambers, please.
I'd like him to respond.
Did you want to respond to that?
Yes, I would like to.
Sure,
sir.
go ahead.
Actually, there are still rails behind the house, so I am there. I think autumn, there's no rail there. There's no way of doing that, and I don't want to underestimate your suggestion. I mean, I have thought that through too. I think all of us have, but the tide has turned for the rail when it comes to. It's very expensive to ship anything by rail, and about the only thing that's on the railroad tracks these days is oil. You can tell by the tanker trucks going, or tanker cars going by. We see it all the time in different parts of the town. So. To me, if anything, if there was a vision here for us all to deal with this, both of these things, like save that area for perhaps the benefit of the community, and we do need something in the northern part of the community, and we'll make these comments too, next week or on the 28th. But but our feeling is that we can probably work with the situation with the golf course development and that as well. And maybe even someday, a bridge, who knows?
Just to correct one thing you made, that rail travel's a thing of the past. It's not. CN is looking at a huge acquisition of property to build a massive rail yard in the Milton area. So rail travel is not quite a thing of the past as far as industrial goods are concerned.
Go ahead, Counselor Chambers, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the delegation, I have the feeling that you must be very frustrated coming to the formalized processes of committee meetings as a delegation, having to speak theoretically only 10 minutes, having no opportunity to have a real discussion about the issues and the objectives that you wish to achieve. A couple questions. You had a meeting with a smaller group at a more informal session with the chairman and the mayor, and I don't know who all was there because I was not there. Did you find that meeting productive? And while you're thinking of the answer for that, I'm just wondering if another meeting in a more informal session where a discussion can occur between yourselves, the group, and ourselves, the council, and themselves, the staff, and the experts, and the engineer, et cetera, in a more conducive area to have a discussion about the issues and how to solve them, rather than coming here once a month to a planning committee meeting or a corporate development committee meeting or a council meeting and having to stand there and plead with us to help you achieve your objectives. I'm thinking that it may be a more conducive setting to solve problems in a more informal session. So my questions are, was the meeting you had productive? And would another meeting or another couple meetings be more productive, and hopefully we can work together to achieve some of the objectives?
Yeah, perhaps, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, sir.
Perhaps. I think I need to always take this back to the community that we're coming from. I'm only one person, one spokesperson. I know I'm the one you're seeing the most often, but I'm not making up this information. We do sit down as a group. The group then appointed 5 spokespersons. We have met regularly to discuss what we're trying to accomplish. I think in the beginning, on June the 26th, when we first came here and presented our first objections, it took time. We only understood this on May the 24th, so we only have 4 weeks to get ourselves all together, try to build a unified voice and understand, and what are our clear objections. Plus, we had to write a fairly comprehensive document back to the engineer. And so all that took place in a very short period of time. But when we left that meeting, that was the county council meeting on June the 26th, I don't think we really thought anybody heard us, to be perfectly frank, and not being disrespectful. I think we just thought it's another delegation coming up here and speaking out loud, eh? And so then what happens is we go back and we talk amongst ourselves. But we did ask, back at that meeting, we did ask for a special meeting with some 5 or 6 individuals to sort of narrow the focus on what we're actually trying to achieve. But that took time as well to put together. And then that finally happened on August the 7th, partly because of vacations. Staff were on vacation, some of our people are on vacation, and that's why it, took 3 or 4 weeks. And however, in the meantime, we're on a learning curve as well. Which committee deals with what? And that took time too for us to understand. The LPAT, anything to do with the planning side of this subdivision or any, had to come forward to the planning community, your planning committee. I think if we came to this committee and started talking about planning issues, you probably would have kicked us out. And on the other hand, we come to this committee specifically dealing with the EA because we feel there are problems with it right from the day one, how it was conceived, where it's going, and our perception that nobody's really listening, that there's a pre-designed solution here. So, going back to the August 7th, when they did set up this small community, 5-on-7 or 5-on-8, which was recommended by the CAO's office, it just seemed that, okay, we'll put on our 25-minute presentation, which you're reviewing now, and which staff have heard, and it's not like we could invite everybody, right? We're trying to keep it small and focused. I think that was what the recommendation was. And so, but then the BTE engineer, he also gets his 20 minutes, and he did respond to some questions and accepted some of the concerns. But we didn't walk away thinking anything was going to happen to that. We didn't get a lot back from staff, that's for sure. They sort of absorbed some of it, but no statements came back to us. So for sure, we have to come back here, talk to the EA issues, and make sure you're clear that we are also objecting to some of those things. And then we'll come back with a plan to county. I mean, again, we don't have a lot. It takes time to do these things. But if you give us that opportunity, maybe we can state our case. And as you suggested, maybe, take 2 or 3 meetings in a different setting. That could take place as well.
Thank you, Mr. Graber. Councilor Chambers?
If I might just a supplementary, it seems like we're trying to solve an issue in separate camps where we should be trying to solve the issue together. And this venue is not the venue to solve the issues, in my opinion. It's a formalized committee meeting. And I'm thinking, and you really didn't answer my question, if you think a meeting of your group, representatives from your group, representatives from here, there, and everywhere to solve the problems and bring everybody to the same page, hopefully to achieve some of the objectives, and then perhaps that group can report to the formalized council meeting or whatever. But I'm telling you right now that you're going to go out of here tonight with having felt that you've made a presentation, and this group, it's not the venue to deal with that. We don't, it just doesn't work that way in the committee. So we need to get together to work on the solutions in a venue that can be productive. And not to say that committee meetings aren't productive, but in situations like this, it's a little bit more complicated than you coming and make a delegation and us asking questions of clarifications and then having a solution somehow by a resolution. It's much more complicated than that. So maybe a yes or no question. Do you feel that a meeting with your group and a smaller group in a less formalized session to work on the objectives and perhaps report back with a plan to council would be productive?
I would say yes, with a caveat, if that's okay.
Well, and like I said at the beginning, Mr. Graber, we're all trying to work on this together, and I think we're coming maybe from it from different directions. I mean, I only live 400 meters from you, down Bailey on St. Patrick. I know what you're dealing with. I hear it every day. My lovely wife reminds me of it. And I think something like Councillor Chambers is talking about here is a perfect solution. Getting together. Let's get together as a community and resolve this. It's the only way we're going to do it.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
Chairman?
Yes.
I would like to hear the caveat.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, the caveat would be, it's more than one word, though, if that's okay. My feeling is that there's a level of understanding here that I don't think if you go to a public meeting, that anybody's going to get anywhere here. We're going to probably be right back here objecting. So it's this community that I believe that, of which I'm one of the spokespersons, who have probably done the most research and have the most common understanding of the documentation that we have so far. But for to go to the public venue, that's what happened at the PIC.
I'm not suggesting a public venue. I'm suggesting a meeting of your group and a smaller group together.
That makes sense.
And working on solutions that can be brought forward to perhaps a public meeting. But we need to move forward, because I don't want to have you coming here to the next meeting as frustrated and having nothing achieved. And I think it's time to get together and work on understanding, work on objectives, and work on communication and hopefully a path forward, whether it be good, bad, or otherwise.
So are you recommending a working committee that would work with us?
Yes, and I'm prepared to make a motion but I don't want to do it if you don't want to if you think it's not going to be productive.
I think that is appropriate. This is not just to the side issue too. This is minor, but I believe it was the CAO or the county's office that said if we were going to speak to the EA, we had to speak to this committee. If we were speaking to the LPAT, we had to speak to the planning committee. That's why we're probably at both committees talking about what you may think is a similar thing, but to us, we try to keep it separated so that, and that's what's happened here.
And I think, Mr. Graber, if we take this offline and make it a committee of its own to look after this because of the logistics and how many people it's affecting in this community, we take it offline, it's a group of its own, it has a life of its own, and it grows from there. And we develop and go back and forth and see how we can make this work as a community. We all have to live with this, so let's all work together on it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Who else? You'll make a motion and then,
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Graber.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving along to item 4D, Deborah Andre, St. George parking lot lease. Please come forward, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, just for your information, I'm not looking at you. I'm looking down at a screen here, so there is a screen that's exactly the same back here, so don't think I'm not looking at you because I don't want to. I have to keep my eye on that screen as well. Please proceed. State your name.
Yeah, my name is Deborah Andre. I'm at 12 Main Street North in St. George.
We'll take a 2-minute recess while people leave. Thank you.
I know. Oh, hey.
Yeah.
Please, Ms. Andre, please proceed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for waiting. We appreciate it.
Not a problem. So, Your Worship, Mr. Chair, honorable councilors, members of staff, and all the citizens of Brant County who haven't left. Okay. You know, people from the county with their vests on in the parking lot went over to find out what they were doing, to ask some questions. And then a member from the church came out and told him it was none of his business. That does not go down well. We've been neighbors there for 35 years. Does not go down well. So we found out on June 26th that there were plans in the works to turn our quiet little church parking lot, which was used several times a month, you know, like once a week, and then maybe a few other functions, to turn it into a municipal park. And I started to email some of the people that I know at council to find out what's going on, try to get some information. And found out that decisions had already been made. And the neighbors around St. George United Church parking lot, since 2002, have worked together with committees at the church to find solutions for using that parking lot in a way that is good for the neighborhood. Okay. From 2002 to 2004, we had committee meetings, we had community meetings, we had, you know, letters back and forth. And in 2004, after looking at the traffic patterns of people zooming through the parking lot and causing all kinds of ruckus, it was decided, the church agreed to put in a gate that would be closed unless there was a church function. So for 14 years, we have had that gate, and it's absolutely made things so much better. And then suddenly to hear that we might lose that and go back to the beginning, even worse than the beginning, because then it wouldn't just be a church parking lot. We don't know what a municipal parking lot would look like in St. George, right? We know now that we have 3 drinking establishments, well, 4 if you count the Italian restaurant, but drinking establishments are open till 2 in the morning. Are we going to have people coming to get their cars at 2 o'clock in the morning? Right? These are all concerns now that suddenly we find decisions have been made leaving us out. I mean, being told that it's none of your business definitely does not sound like transparency, right? So, you know, I sent emails to Mr. Barani, Mr. Bradley, all the people that I knew, and we had very quick, very good response from Ms. Newton. We set up a meeting at the arena in St. George, and people came and started to express concerns. And in between, you know, we had another meeting on August the 1st at the arena as well, and people brought forward concerns. In between, we had emails. And I'm delighted that I get to express an apology, because when I wrote my email today, I said that the meetings that we've had after the CDC meetings have been geared at asking the neighbors to accommodate what has already been planned. We were asked to do all of the compromising. It was suggested at the August 1st meeting that permit-only parking might make it easier to exert control over traffic flow and make it less onerous for the neighbors, but neither the church nor the county has shown any willingness to move off of their original plan. I was wrong. I'm delighted that I was wrong, because the report that Ms. Newton sent in said the recommendation is that the lot will be utilized as permit only versus a public lot. It's such a good feeling to know that people are listening, you know, that we are actually communicating. That is wonderful. However, I still plan to advocate for closing the Main Street access. People have become used to it being closed over the 14-year period, and we have had some thoughts about perhaps locating a garden in that area near Main Street, where more people can see it and enjoy it. It was actually one of the suggestions in 2004, that if a garden were put into that area, a lot of people would enjoy it, and it would be one solution for what to do with that end of the parking lot. The traffic issues in 2002 to 2004 were often severe, necessitating the installation of the gate. The neighbors often had to call the police and had to go and report traffic violations, people going through the parking lot, doing donuts, spraying gravel, doing all kinds of unsafe things. And Main Street has only become more busy over the last 14 years. Okay. One of the things that I read in the report that I don't agree with, though, I disagree with the statement that there are no deficiencies or safety concerns about using the Main Street access. Okay. Currently, the driveway is 5.3 meters, and the report suggests that it needs to be a minimum of 6 meters in order to accommodate two-way traffic. That means it has to be extended 0.7 meters, which is about 27.5 inches, to the south, requiring that the curb be cut, and it would come perilously close to the telephone pole that services multiple properties. It would also include an added expense if the pole needs to be moved or replaced. Okay. The report sees a potential problem at Church Avenue and Main Street, but it doesn't see a potential problem directly across the street if we open that access. If that access on Main Street North to the parking lot is open, we will have created an intersection. An intersection without a stop sign, without a stoplight. And we know that some of the properties north of the parking lot on Main Street have experienced the dangerous driving of people coming down Main Street much, much too quickly. You know, if the weather's even questionable, if the roads are wet, God help you if there's ice, and people try to turn onto Sunnyside, they try to negotiate those turns. They're not able to do it safely. We know that Dr. Hutton's office has been hit by a driver who lost control of the car. Our neighbor had their house hit by a driver who lost control of their car and came around the corner. And one of our neighbors who's here this evening has often found people on his front lawn because they tried to negotiate a turn they were driving too fast to make. And so if that becomes now an open driveway, we will be back, I fear, to the kind of problems that we had in 2002 to 2004. So while I'm delighted that we are going to push for permit-only parking, and I'm not really sure what all that means. So, you know, more information would be very helpful about how do you get a permit, who's going to get a permit. We're still going to push to try to close it simply for safety's sake. There was another part in the report that said, the South Dumfries District Fire Chief noted that the entrance on Main Street should be made open and remain open for public safety and access to the church through the parking lot. Now, in the minutes from August 1st, Mr. Nesbitt is identified as Deputy Fire Chief. So I just hope I'm thinking about the right person. Am I talking about the same person, right? In recommending that the Main Street access be used, he does not acknowledge that the fire hydrant for the church is actually on Beverly Street in front of the church, or that each driveway already has signs saying, no parking, fire lane. The separate driveways beside the church, one on the east side, one on the west, are 4.3 meters and 6 meters, respectively, for separate entrance and exit. Additionally, if they were to try to access the lot via Main Street in a fire truck, that would mean that the fire truck would have to stop at the barriers on the wrong side of the church to the fire hydrant. Okay. Now, there is also a note that, you know, and I appreciate trying to be considerate to all of the people. The Beverly Street entrance was paved by the St. George United Church in recent years through a provincial grant in order to provide safe and stable pedestrian access for senior members of the church and the community. But as far as I understand, we don't actually have information to suggest that using the driveways as parking lot driveways would be a violation of the provincial grant. Again, we would need more information.
One more minute, Ms. Andre?
Oh, okay. All right. See, I have to have notes because I can talk for an hour, right? Everybody knows that. All right. The report indicates that the lot is currently designated as a commercial parking lot. I beg to differ, but I'm willing to learn if I'm mistaken. We've always referred to it at our recent meetings as a private property, and there's no charge to use the lot for parking, to my knowledge. We appreciate the consideration of being offered privacy fence and would like to learn more, but our motivation is to try to come up with a plan that will be seen as helpful to all involved and not just to get a fence. Part of the difficulty for the neighbors is having been excluded from the process over the year or so that meetings and discussions have been taking place. We appreciate the heads up about the St. George Master Plan, which will be worked on between now and 2019. It's not very far off. We have noted the large green P for parking signs that point north on Main Street and would like to know more about what that means. So, thank you very much for the opportunity to come. I really appreciate it. And I think communication, as we saw from our speaker just before, communication is the key. That if we all work together, we're going to come up with something much better than any of us could come up with alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Andre. Any questions? Councillor Pierce and Councillor Gatward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I'm sorry, you said it at first there. You live right on Main Street?
Yes, we are on the north border of the parking lot.
And what's your address?
12 Main Street North.
Okay, I'm not sure this is something that's on the docket tonight as well. There's a letter here that's in favor of this. It's got over 60 signatures on it, and the residents are 1314 Main Street.
1314? No.
13 Main Street, 14 Main Street.
No, because 13 Main Street North is a neighbor who attended the August 1st meeting and attended the July 4th meeting, and she's not in favor.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm not sure this is public knowledge here. It's in under 9DI. I'm not sure if we can give the delegation a copy of that, but there's a thing here with over 60 signatures on it.
Okay. Well, that's new information for me.
Yeah, that's why I asked your address, because I was just kind of wondering here, because 1314, and then Church Street, a number of signatures on there as well.
Yeah, no, oh, okay.
Okay, thank you. No, I was just wondering where exactly you live down there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Gatward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to mention, you were talking about the fire department, and they might not necessarily be going to the church for a fire where the fire hydrant is located. They could be going to the church for a medical call and want to pull in the closest driveway they can find to get there as quickly as possible. Because as you know, I'm sure, our fire departments answer calls for residents in distress, because most times they can arrive more quickly than the ambulance. And if someone is at church and in trouble, our great fire department in St. George can help them. So there's other reasons that they may go to the church than just to hook up to that hydrant you mentioned.
Oh, I understand, but we have often seen large trucks come down that same drive. Actually, just one day last week, we saw a Hydro One truck with a big crane on it come down that very same street with no problems whatsoever. So there's lots of room. That road is 6 meters wide, which is what they want to increase the Main Street North, or the Main Street access to 6 meters. It's already 6 meters. Right, and they want to put two-way traffic on the 6 meters. Okay. And these addresses, we have Main Street South. So that's south of the lights. That is where the people live above the businesses. Right?
And I do think the permitting to be used by the business owners will reduce your fear of people going in and out at 2 in the morning. Probably most businesses in St. George would be open till 9 or 10 o'clock at night at the latest, unless it's a bar and they're allowed to stay open longer. But I would expect they appreciate the additional parking and would be respectful of the neighbors.
Well, that is to be hoped.
Right.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Members of the committee, we would like to start back with 4A, and we've already had that presentation and introduction of the new police inspector. B, I believe that staff will work with Mr. Totten on the permits, fees, and how to go about the arbitration on that. How would we like to deal with C? Members of committee, 4C, Mr. James Graber. Councillor Chambers, please. I knew you would come to the rescue.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I've been kind of working in my mind a resolution that is a skeleton resolution that I would hope staff could perhaps fine-tune. It goes something like this, and again, it's going to be moved by myself that staff with Mr. Grabner and the mayor on behalf of council convene a working group, membership at their discretion. I'm not just exactly sure who Mr. Grabner wants or so it'll be at their discretion to develop, one, an understanding of the community issues. We need to understand what the issues are and that they've outlined them.
Yep.
And the status of the project. So to develop an understanding of the community issues and the status of the project. In some ways, the horse is out of the gate and they need to understand what's out and what isn't, and et cetera, and I think we need to do that. Two, a decision package to move the project forward. In other words, we may have decisions to make based on what the working group comes up with, so that's part of that, and we need to have that presented to us so we can make the decisions. And number three, a communication strategy so that everybody knows what's going on and where everybody stands and how we're moving forward. So that's my skeleton resolution, and what my thrust is, and what our thrust should be, I believe, is to work with the group together rather than, it almost seems adversarial at this point with Mr. Grabner having to come and speak 10 minutes and we threaten to throw them out if they clap, and this, we need to get away from that. So in a smaller working group, this can be done, and that working group can report back to the council or the appropriate body and the citizens that Mr. Grabner is represented. So that's my thinking on how to move the project forward and stay connected as a community and working together as a community.
Mayor Eddy seconds that.
Recognizing that some issues have already been decided and things can and can't be done. So
And when you say communications, that should be a single point communications of the committee, because you don't want 2 points of communication. You need a single joint communication.
I think that the staff or the group can develop how they wish to communicate what they're doing, report to the council. That'll be up to them, the best way they do that.
Okay, we have a seconder.
And I don't think you need a terms of reference. I think it's an understanding, and the time frames can be worked out. That's going to be an issue, but we'll let them do it. Anyway.
Thank you. Councillor Pearson, Councillor Simons, and then Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking to the motion, I'm definitely in support of a smaller group here. I think that's definitely the way to go. Everybody works together. I think Mr. Grabner said that there's 5 people that are allotted as spokespersons for their group. I know we're discussing numbers earlier. Maybe that's a starting point to have the 5 people from the group and potentially, 5 from council, 5 from staff. I don't know if we want to work ourselves around that number. Even if we were to do that with the 3 different groups, that's only 15 people. I think that's definitely more workable than a larger setting. So I'm definitely in favor of this, and maybe that's a number to start at. I'm not sure. Just throwing it out there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would it be in place to have this recommendation at the end of the day of this meeting or meetings be referred to the Environmental Advisory Study? Or are we planning on making a decision before the EA study has been completed? I don't know what, the EA was not mentioned in the motion, so.
Well, I don't think, the Class EA has to continue anyways. This group will not have any issue with the Class EA. Class EA is a separate item altogether. Class EA, they can take their ideas, as was stated earlier, and it will be brought to committees to deal with that as a joint group. That information will go back to staff who will be part of that. They can say right there if it can happen or it can't. So staff's going to be part of this whole process as well.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, I think you're saying that the decision that would be made by council is not complete until after the EA study is complete. Is that correct?
Yes, we haven't even had the Class EA study done yet. It's not completed
Well, it's not
yet.
complete yet, and that's what
It's
I'm
not.
trying to get at.
Right.
How can we make a decision?
We're not making a decision. What we're doing is coming up with ideas and solutions that may work together to achieve an end goal.
Could I have the motion?
May achieve.
Could I have the motion read again, please?
Could you
Thank you.
please read the motion again?
Thank you.
The motion is that staff, Mr. Graber, and the mayor convene a working group, membership to be determined at their discretion, to develop 1, an understanding of the community issues and the status of the project, 2, a decision package to move the project forward, and 3, a communication strategy.
Councillor Coleman, please. And then Councillor Chambers.
Well, I do think that BT Engineering needs to be studied. So if they're not part of it, that the cards can be all laid on the table, then they're going to just keep coming back and back until, because they're not going to happen. And I think that they need to be part of this working group. And I don't think it needs to be a large group.
No.
But I think, so you can lay the table out there and here's the cards, but you gotta have the right people there as part of it. That's my take.
The yeas and nays, for sure. Councillor Gatward?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would suggest tonight that, as well as the mayor, if there's any Paris councillors that want to volunteer to sit on the working group, including yourself and Councillor Simon, since it's in your ward, that we know that you're part.
Thank you. Councillor Chambers, please.
The project for it, that's not to move forward, I will just say. That would, what I had before would imply that.
Right.
Like, there are some things decided and some concurrent processes like the EA that are going on. We can't affect it. So that, I think, is a better terminology, and I think the working group can understand that. And as far as the membership, I agree, and I agree, and I'm sure the people that are leading the working group would agree as well, and they can move forward. But
Thank you. Any other questions, concerns? Councillor Gatward, final question.
It's not a question, so
Comment?
then the clerk will amend the motion to include the 2 ward councillors?
no.
No?
That's not part of my motion. If we start seating the committee, let Mr. Grabner should have a say, the staff should have a say, and the mayor on behalf of council. Certainly the mayor is astute like you are and would automatically perhaps have the ward councillors there. But to put it in the resolution, I think is not necessary, and perhaps...
I don't care how we do it as long as it gets done.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please. Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 4D, how would committee like to deal with that? move for staff report?
No.
I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Oh, there is a report coming forward later. Okay, thank you. We'll deal with it then. Okay, thank you. Moving forward, adoption of minutes from previous meeting, please. Councillor Coleman, Councillor Pierce. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none? Vote on the minutes. Opposed? Carried. Any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll move on to item 7, consent items. There are no consent items to be approved, consent items to be received. We have B1 through 5. Motion, please. Councillor Pierce, Councillor Coleman. Anyone like any pulled? Councillor Gatward, then Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 7B1, under Development Services. I'm wondering if that's an error, the 102%. Perhaps the treasurer can fill us in.
Certainly. Please, Heather.
No, it's not an error. It's significant legal fees in development services for the OMB hearings.
So the number is half the actual, but yet it says 102%. Shouldn't it be over the $1 million then?
Do you have a copy of the document, Heather?
No,
If you could just take a second to explain that, please.
the actual is at the $1 million, right? The first column is your actual.
For the first 6 months.
Yes, and the next column is your budget, which is only for 6 months, and it's at 545, so it's actually double to what, right? And then your full budget is the $1 million, so it's just over,
Okay,
okay?
You clear on that now, Councillor?
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Miller,
It's
please. Do
confusing.
you want this Heather up there to stay?
Well, it might help.
Okay, Heather, please.
7B2, development charges. And I was wondering, maybe, through Mr. Chair to Heather, she can help me out.
Certainly.
And if I look at the opening, just as an example, if I look at roads, opening balance January 1st, 2017, I see 3.7 million in brackets. Does that mean that we owe 3.7 million?
That the reserve is overdrawn yet, because the infrastructure has to happen for the development charges before we're able to collect them.
Okay, so if anything that doesn't have the brackets, that money's sitting somewhere in the bank account?
Right.
Okay, so then my question would be, to who do we owe that money to? Is that do we owe that money to somebody? Or is it just an accounting kind of?
It's an accounting kind of thing. We haven't collected the DCs from the developer, so actually we cash flowed it, so it's sitting as a loan, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none. 7B, 1 to 5, all in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. Committee reports. There are none. Staff reports. Corporate services, 9A1, CD 1851, eliminating a school crossing guard location, Main Street and Ball Street in Paris. There is a recommendation. Councillor Pierce?
I'll move to get it on the floor, but I do have a question.
Okay. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Wheat. Go ahead, Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. So it does say in the report that the crossing guard was made aware that, and don't get me wrong, I agree with what's going on here because it's not needed in that particular location. And the crossing guard has been made aware that that position is no longer going to be going on. I'm just wondering if the crossing guard, or if it was a possibility to suggest to the crossing guard that their services may be used elsewhere. I don't know if they would, because sometimes they live close to the crosswalks that they're monitoring, but I'm just curious if that was ever put out as an option, the fact that, you know, we might be able to use your services elsewhere.
Ms. Dale, could you answer that for us, please? Thank you. Good question, John.
Good evening, Chairman, Councilors. I'm not aware of the circumstances with respect to that crossing guard. I know certainly if they wanted to continue with a position, there was probably opportunities for them to go on a replacement list. But when it states that there's no objection, I have a feeling that they were probably just willing to not have that position any longer. But I could certainly try and get more detail to you in an email tomorrow to resolve that concern. But I don't believe it was a situation where that person was losing a job and had concerns about losing their position.
Okay, and as I say, the way I read it in the report is they kind of agreed that it wasn't necessary as well. So again, I'm just curious, you know, we're talking about the safety of our kids here, and if they can be used elsewhere and they're willing to, again, they may say no thanks, but I'm just wondering if it was put out there.
I can assure you that if they're willing to continue, we'd put them swiftly on a replacement list because we do have a difficult time keeping them, so yes. But I can certainly get that information, email it to you.
That would be great.
Tomorrow?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Dale. Thanks, John. I appreciate the question. Any other questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Number 2, CD 1868, 2019 budget direction. There is a recommendation. Councillor Simons? Okay. Okay. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Coleman. Please, Councillor Simons, and then Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Because this budget preparation, we do this every year, of course, with the dates. And because it is later this year as proposed and it comes in January after the new election, it could make a bit of confusion and it'd be problematic for some councillors. I being one, and I don't know how many other ones. But in saying that, I would like to know if we could move the deliberation meeting of Wednesday, February 6th to the week of February the 18th. I did check with staff to see if it would be okay if they could manage to get the reports changed by council. They said yes, they could. So I'm bringing it forward if that could be possible. Seeking a seconder.
I'm sorry, Councillor Simons, what was the reasoning?
The reason is because I won't be present at this meeting on the February the 6th.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if there's any other councillors that will be absent also, but knowing right now I will be absent, so.
Okay. Councillor Pierce.
Just throwing this out there, who knows what's going to happen on October 22nd? Hopefully it's, you know, who knows who's going to be sitting around this table. So I don't know, I hear what you're saying, but in the same sense, there might be same new councillors here that may be away
I see what you're saying.
on the change date, right?
I see what you're saying.
So
I might not be in my seat. That's what you're saying.
I'm not saying that.
And it is possible, and I didn't even
None
look
of
at
us
that.
maybe.
I didn't even look at that, and I apologize. I never even looked at that aspect of it. Okay, so I guess what Councillor Pierce, you're suggesting we don't change it. Leave it status quo. If you can make the meeting, you can. If you can't, fine too, because you might not be here for other reasons.
Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in support of a part of this motion, but the biggest part that bothers me is council approval by the 26th of February. Last year at ORG conference in Toronto, end of February, sitting in one of the seminars, the question was asked of how many municipalities have already passed their budget. Only a third of us had passed our budgets. The rest were chastised for not passing a budget. So that would make us 3 months into our year. So I would like to see if somehow that date of February 26th could be moved up much sooner, that we only got 2 months of the year moved up. Because I think that's waiting an awful long time between deliberation on February the 6th and passing it as a council approval on the 26th. I think that could be moved up and shortened in there somewheres, because I just have a problem operating on a year that you're operating without approval. And I know there's rules and regular ways you can get around it, but I think it needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Councilor Gatward, and then Mr. Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I realize some of the public works projects, they do like to get going on them fairly soon, and we have approved some prior to actual budget approval. But I'm feeling that the initial presentation of the budget on Wednesday, January 16th is 6 hours. This is a huge budget for our whole county. And the next week, we hear from the agencies, GRCA, John Noble, Health Unit, etc. The next week, we do the grants, and then we deliberate. We have 6 hours to hear a high-level presentation on the budgets, and then that's it. I don't feel that's enough time, and I would like to see another meeting, or the meetings moved down a week, so that we can have a week where we can question Public Works or Community Services and so we know what's in the budget. We're supposed to be transparent and accountable to the taxpayers. And many times, items are all lumped together in the budget, and we don't know what's there. And I don't like that, quite frankly. We used to go through the budgets at our various committees, Roads Committee, Community Services Committee, and we got a more detailed picture. And I like that, but I don't like this, and that's why I'm asking for an extra meeting so that we can discuss some of the contents in the budget, or we can get a better overview. And this is particularly important because we probably will have new councillors around the table, and this will be their first budget. And I just don't think that this is enough time. And the council meeting is on February the 26th. I don't see how we can possibly move that up unless we change council meeting. And so if we could just add one extra meeting in there, I could support the recommendation.
Councilor Coleman, please. Then Councilor Pierce.
We can move a council meeting anytime, we can move it on the night, it's our schedule at the end of the year. Council meetings only need about 3 days for the clerk to get it out, so council meetings can be moved up, I think. That's not right.
Okay. Councilor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, that was going to be one of my comments. We can call for a council meeting at any point in time. But what I would like to say here is this is the exact same format we've used for our last 2 budgets, and I think it's worked out pretty well. So I'm not sure, potentially to Councillor Coleman's, and again, we're speaking for a council that we may or may not be on. The only thing I could suggest is potentially, move everything up a week. So we're starting on the 9th, keep the Wednesdays, and then we can state now that, there's going to be a special council meeting on the day after deliberation, for that matter.
Thank you. Mr. Chambers?
Allows for additional or actually deletions, but that way you're not locked in stone and you can decide at the time depending on what's going on.
Do we have a seconder for that amendment? Mayor Eddy? Mr. Bradley, did you want to speak to that, please?
Mr. Chair, and certainly, and I agree with that completely. I was just going to say, in answer to a couple of the questions, it's a new council budget, so we do need time for orientation in December. We would normally start this process in late October or November with the aim of finishing it before the year, but a first council budget, and I remember when that was said at OGRA, but it was in reference to a beginning as council needs additional meetings, or if council reaches a point where they have a completed budget after initial deliberations, it can be approved. So again, it's an evolutionary process. It'll take as long as council needs it to take. So,
thank you, Mr. Bradley. Councilor Miller?
And I'll support the amendment, but I do want to speak to what Michael said, and actually Councilor Gatward pointed out. Yeah, it is a new council, and it would be nice to maybe go a little bit further into depth in some of these departmental budgets, because you know, we spend more time deliberating the community grants than we do, say, on a $6 million expenditure on something else. So I'm throwing my weight behind that, but we'll wait and see what develops.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments before I call the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Moving on.
Motion as amended.
Oh, sorry, motion as amended. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 3, CD 1876, insurance and indemnity requirements in subdivision agreements. There is a recommendation. Councillor Coleman, seconder, please. Second. Councillor Weed, any questions or concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. General Manager's update, please. Ms. Stevenson?
Okay.
You're on.
I'm on. I just have a few things to report to committee. The first is on the OPP detachment. The staff are working diligently to finalize the tender document, and with an aim of getting that out by the end of August or early September. The auditors are scheduled to present the 2017 financial statements at the August council meeting. And staff are also working to organize an ad hoc staff committee to prepare the municipality for the impending cannabis legislation, and maybe making recommendations to committee as a result of that, once that's ready.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much. Operations, General Manager's update, Mr. Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And before Mr. Walton comes, I just wanted to take the opportunity to introduce Mr. Walton, who is the new General Manager of Operations. So Rob Walton, I think most of you know him, but he was previously the Director of Public Works with Oxford. Prior to that, he had a fairly significant consulting career with Case Smart and Associates, as well as R.J. Burnside. He's been with us for just not quite a year now as our Director of Infrastructure. And he's a well-published individual, and he's also been active with a number of professional associations, including the Ontario Waterworks Association and the Ontario Municipal Water Association. But a lot of us, when we first meet Rob, we think he looks familiar because he has for 17 years been serving on the question box panel at the OGRA conference, which is at the end of the conference, and I know is one of the things that I always look forward to, is providing his wisdom on all things engineering and municipal public works related. So Rob's a professional engineer, and he has a BSc from the University of Guelph in engineering, so we're delighted to have Rob join us as part of our senior management team as the General Manager of Operations. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Walton, please.
Thanks, Michael, for those kind words, and thanks to all the well wishes that I've got in the new position. One thing I can report is that we're working very diligently to replace my old position, Director of Infrastructure Services, and actually that position closed last night at midnight, and we have a good long list of candidates that we're sifting through right now and starting to work on setting up interviews. As you know, in traveling around the county, there's a lot of construction on the go. Powerline Road, Alexander Street in Burford, Watts Pond Road, the Flanner and Anderson Bridges, and the Martin Culvert, just for a snapshot of them. One thing I will tell you is that we're working diligently on Powerline Road to our contractor that the county hired has completed the work they can do now until the hydro relocations are done, and there's 3 different power authorities here: Hydro One Transmission, Hydro One Distribution, Energy Plus, all have to do work here. The CAO and I actually had a teleconference this morning with Energy Plus to talk about some scheduling issues, and there's going to be another meeting this week to work on going out, because we're working very diligently to having that project done in November. Thank you.
Any questions? Merity, please.
Prime Energy Plus being cooperative.
In the meeting today, yes. The problem is the whole complications of the scheduling of this project, which is not only scheduling for them and their workforces, but scheduling for outages that have to happen. So it is a complex thing, and everybody has different issues. The main transmission line affects all the way back to Woodstock and the Toyota assembly plant there. So there are promises made to them of you know, when power interruptions can and can't happen. And it's a fairly major line for Energy Plus as well.
You feel it'll be a timely completion?
We're going to know that soon, because certain actions have to happen in the next few weeks for it to happen, and for the paving to happen by November.
Councillor Simons, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To you, Rob, congratulations on your new position too, by the way. Have all the hydro lines been changed or looked after on Watts Pond Road? Because I know they were working on it the last time I was out there.
They're working on that right now. There's a number of activities going on out there as we speak.
Okay, thank you. Really happy to see that project going forward.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Rob. Thank you. Moving on to Development Services, General Manager's update, please. Mr. Pomponi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For last week's update, I want to give a further update on the Mile Hill Plan of Subdivision. It was registered late Friday, I believe, or Friday, which included a number of supporting documents for easements. That still doesn't give them their first interim certificate, which would allow for occupancy of units. That has to happen once the Gurney outlet is constructed. We do have a first interim certificate that was issued for 33 units. That's part of the original, I think, or a meeting or two ago, I said there was another, I believe it was 67 units that were being allowed for registration occupancy. First interim certificate was issued for 33 within the Mile Hill subdivision. So those ones could be occupied, permits issued, and occupancy. So as I said earlier, the first interim certificate is still required for the Gurney outlet. Staff have set up a tentative site meeting on August 20th to do an inspection of the Gurney drain. The intent of that is to make sure that it's acceptable to our standards, and if it is, then it would allow for potentially interim, or the first interim certificate to be issued and permits to be available for the remainder of the subdivision. The site meeting's happening on Monday. Not certain of the time, has been nailed down yet. We're hoping everything's going to go well. Other than that, I'd just like to say I'm not certain if anybody's seen the building permit activity, but it's significantly higher than it was last year. It's in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 times what we've had last year. Certainly in the Brookfield subdivision, we have a staff that is dedicated just to the Brookfield subdivision. So,
thank you. Any questions, comments? Councillor Pearce and Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could, just a comment, you just kind of touched on it there, Mark, at the end about Brookfield. I had a buddy of mine come into town that hasn't been in town for about 1.5 years, and he come by the north end and legitimately thought he was in the wrong spot, because he kind of went, whoa, these weren't here. So it's amazing to see them, how many are being built up in there.
yeah, and if I may build on that, Mr. Chair, we actually have drones flying it weekly, so you can actually see some of the activity and the growth that's happening sort of on a time-lapse basis. So.
Councillor Miller, then Councillor Simons, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Mark. Where are we with the hiring of the staff? If you got a couple more positions, I think, left to go when you're done, or?
Yeah, it's more than a couple. Yeah, it's more than a couple. We have actually we have a couple of positions where we're working on the job descriptions as we speak. We're working with HR on those. What that requires is going off to our job evaluation person, which I think is Ms. Love. She was here earlier in the previous meeting. So we're in the process. We're working on those. We're currently working on about 3 different job descriptions right now. One is certainly the zoning technician, and then there's a couple for for an engineering for field services staff. We expect that the field services staff are going to be quite busy in the next little while. As you've seen, we've had certainly one of the people in the position, which is Lori Fox, who's dealing with the site alteration, extremely busy. We expect that activity is going to pick up once subdivisions get moving. So, yeah.
Counselor Simons, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Mark, Brookfield Development, can you tell me how many houses have been built in this first phase, and how many will be allowed to move forward in the second?
I'll try.
Thank you.
Don't hold me to this, but I believe that the phase that was registered was about 225, I believe.
Okay.
I think that the next phase is going to get them up to somewhere closer to 4 or 450. That's right. There is other work that has to be done. Certainly some of the work that is being initiated with the Grand River Street North EA, the construction work required, such as the underground upgrades and work, is part of that, which will allow additional development to occur in the future.
So they can build up to 450 more homes, is that what you're saying, until the EA study is complete?
They currently have approval, I believe, to go up to 450.
Okay.
And I think that's it.
Okay, thank you.
That's including the ones where you're seeing the construction activity occurring now.
So it's a total of 450 homes on the site?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
And it was great seeing building staff out doing their jobs on job sites, making sure that people were and were not doing things. I understand there were some fines levied to a developer who decided to make foundations without permits, and I'm glad that they're doing their job and keeping an eye on things like that.
Yes, it certainly is a challenge. With part of it is as I had advised council and committee in the past, the large volume are coming in. It's tough to keep up those deadlines and to meet the expectations. So we are working, and I believe that there was a meeting today with one of the developer groups, and we're looking at it. In some cases, we've had to have drywall removed to do inspections, and we found issues.
Well, I'm glad that they're on the ball and doing it, and that's great.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Moving along to economic development and strategic investment. We do have a item there, D1, CD 1873, St. George United Church parking lease. There is a recommendation. Yes, gentlemen?
I'm going to declare a conflict on this as I'm a member of the St. George United Church.
Okay. Councillor Schmidt?
I will as well, just because of being cross-service resolution, which is related to this.
Okay, thank you. It's your choice, sir. There is a recommendation. Is there any questions or concerns? Okay. Councillor Miller will second to get it on the floor. Any questions, concerns? Councillor Coleman.
I'm not going to support the recommendation because, first of all, I think this parking lot needs to be for the public, and I've seen the petition to come forward tonight from more people that are looking for this for the public parking lot. I think the motion needs to be defeated. The recommendation needs to be defeated, and we can put on the table like that. So I will not support this recommendation.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gatward?
Well, we heard from the resident that lives by the church. She seemed pleased that it was going to be permit parking, which I thought was a good solution. I don't know if all the residents that signed the petition, it's a good solution. The suggestion of providing permits to just those who are allowed to park there. And I support the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Pierce, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can't support this either because my way of looking at it as well is the fact that why would we not have this open to the public? You know, if we're talking somebody with permits, let's just say that a St. George resident goes downtown to go to a restaurant or go to anything and finds that there's no parking spaces, as has been the case. Why should they not be able to park in that spot? I think that, I understand maybe where we were trying to go with this, and it might alleviate some, but I think we're kind of putting ourselves in a situation saying, we're gonna make this parking lot, you can park in it, but you can't. I'm thinking that may open up a can of worms. So I would support this being a public parking lot, and those who were gonna get the permits may in fact, use it anyway.
Councillor Simons?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and if I may, was the reason why this parking lot was chosen or picked because there was no other area in St. George for parking?
Well, Ms. Newton is up here, and I would like her to give some clarification to everyone on this.
Yeah.
So they can
Maybe
have
she
that
could-
clarification and speak to it. Ms. Newton, please.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. This was chosen actually by council. There was a report brought forward in December giving 5 options. All of them, aside from this one, included acquisition of land, obviously at a much higher cost. And there is also the St. George master plan that's proposed in 2019, which would look at the broader issue, including parking in the downtown area. So this was sort of an interim solution and 1-year lease to see the viability of whether this would alleviate the parking congestion downtown in St. George without incurring a huge amount of money to the taxpayers.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, I don't know whether it could be feasible or not, but I do know that St. George Parks, what do you call that kind of parking? Not drive-in. Parallel parking, and it doesn't allow for too many parking spots. Is the street wide enough that you could put angle parking in there on one side? Would really create a lot more spaces, I don't know.
I don't think we want to get into that on this portion of this whole thing. It's just going to cloud everything up on what we're trying to deal with here.
I understand.
And I understand what you're saying, and it may be a solution, but we really need to deal with what we have in front of us
Okay.
right now.
Okay, I get it.
Anyone else? Councillor Chambers, please.
Just a question through you to Allison. You indicated that this is kind of an interim, see what happens kind of thing. I'm wondering if a 6-month trial period was considered or discussed, or, so that's my question. Was that a time frame looked at?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we chose a 1 year so we could look at the traffic flow, which would be examined from the parking lot over a 12-month period in all seasons. This 1 year was acceptable to the St. George United Church. We certainly did talk about longer options, but did want to examine how this was working, and again, didn't want to get too far ahead of what the master plan was going to suggest as longer term or broader solutions. Because this has been used right now, even though it is designated a commercial lot, it has been used primarily by the church and for church functions and some special events that have gone on in the area. And as I said, this was a sort of a solution without incurring a huge amount of money or investment into the project before we get into the master plan process.
Councillor Chambers?
And secondly, not having had a chance to go through the lease, but is there an escape clause if 4 months down the line we find that it's a disaster or whatever? Is there a way out by mutual agreement or something like that within the lease, or is it tied in for 1 year?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is no clause in the lease that would allow us to escape. I would note that the lease actually has already started. If we were to go ahead and do the improvements noted, it would be another month. We would really only have about 8 to 9 months left on the lease.
Any more questions, concerns? There is a recommendation on the floor. All in favor of the recommendation? Opposed?
Motion's carried.
Thank you. General Manager's update, please.
Again, through you, Mr. Chair.
1 second. Would they skip out the side door? Please go ahead, Allison.
Thank you. We've had a busy summer, particularly on the tourism front. I just wanted to update you on some of the activities that have been taking place. The economic development microsite that's been under development is anticipated to launch in late next month, late September. Our economic development strategy has been underway. There have been one-on-one and focus groups and interviews going on over the summer, and our public consultations will be beginning in early fall, September, October. The St. George and Burford CIP programs are also in the process of being finalized, and they'll be coming back to council for approval in the fall. On the tourism front, we've had close to a 40% increase in the volume for the group tour and outfitter attractions. You may have seen a lot of the congestion here. It's because most of our activities have seen a huge jump. The marketing activity that's been underway that we launched earlier this year, specifically speaking to social media, has produced almost double the rate of engagement, again at about 50%. The temporary washroom provision, I know that was a big issue last year, seems to have been working well. We've received 0 visitor complaints this year, so the interim solution that we have in place seems to have alleviated that concern for this year. Since the spring, we've had 21 seat applications approved and held in the County of Brant. That's not including private events that don't require a seat application. We currently have 12 seat applications under review. We have 2 filming productions under review that we've seen just come in the last week. So as we anticipated, that is, I think, going to be something that we're going to see as a trend coming in. And we are looking at that filming strategy to put in place so that we have a better handle on what those types of events are going to entail in the county. Yeah, that was it. We have our special event team has been at 4 major events collecting data and promoting county activities. We'll be attending another 4 in the next month. Again, we're really trying to get a handle on the data and analytics so we have a better idea to report back to council on what those kinds of numbers we're seeing and how we're going to handle that moving forward.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Allison, in regards to the outfitters in the community that are getting that increase of 40%, do we have in part of that study every year, do we get a feedback on how much that's increased for the people in the community who have stores and things in the community, restaurants and things like that? Do we get feedback from them if they've had an increase as well?
Thank you. Yes, we do. And we are actually preparing an economic impact report. Some of those numbers are difficult to quantify and to assign to certain areas, but we can definitely look at the trends. For example, we've seen a 40% increase in that. What are our merchants reporting back and what are their revenues in those months when we're seeing those increases? So we will report back on that data.
Thank you. Anything else? Thank you very much. There is a, oh no, we did that already, recommendation. General Managers, Office of the Chief Administrative Officer. There is a recommendation, CD 1875, Joint Compliance Audit Committee, done by our clerk. There's a recommendation.
I'll move it and I have a question about it.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Gatward.
I also have a question.
Okay. Councillor Pierce first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So can somebody quickly tell me, there's 5 on here, is there a representative from each of the 4 and then one of them has an extra, or I'm just wondering the breakdown here?
Yeah, there's one from Brant, Norfolk, Haldeman, and then 2 from Brantford.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the clerk. Did we receive resumes? Because 2 of these people, I don't have a clue who they are.
We received some resumes. There was a fairly detailed application form that was prepared, and people are asked to give input on any time they've worked on committees or examples of what committees they've worked on, and experience of financial and legal backgrounds.
And so the four clerks, is that who they are, the four? City clerk, yourself, and the two other county clerks that made this decision?
There was 2 clerks and 2 election coordinators from 2 of the places. They're election coordinators for running this program.
From the city?
Yeah, the city and Norfolk had election coordinators at the
Oh, I
meeting
see.
instead of their clerk.
Okay.
per se.
I guess I don't know them either, and we're asked to approve these people, and the ones I know I can certainly feel comfortable with. And I looked for resumes in the package and couldn't find any. So sometimes we do get those. And
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. CAO's update. Mr. Bradley, please.
I voted they were my vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few items I wanted to update committee on. First of all, the transit feasibility study. We're in the second phase of that, and we now have in hand a draft Phase 2 report. So it continues to keep on schedule, a fairly large project. So that Phase 2 report, we're reviewing it, and we'll be reviewing, probably having some discussion with the consultant. And we're on track for a presentation to CDC in October with a recommended transit program for the county. So looking forward to that. The Brant Community Health Care Hub is a project that I continue to work on. We have negotiated a draft agreement with the Family Health Team, and we reviewed all of the submissions that we received from all the potential partners. And so our next step is to just move that all forward, and likely that'll come in the form of one or more recommendations to council on leases or agreements, and then probably a more fulsome business case now that we have partners and potential lease rates starting to come together. So we have been recruiting for the general manager of Community and Protective Services, and we completed interviews today, and we'll be moving forward based on the completion of those interviews, so stay tuned for that. The last thing I wanted to mention is I did sit down just after the last CDC meeting with the district chiefs, the district chiefs from the area stations. We sat down one night, just myself and them. It's been a year since the new chief was hired, and they were part of that selection process, and we wanted to connect with them. It was something that Paul and I previously had said we would do, just to kind of a checkup, if you will, with them, find out how things were going. We had a great meeting. We reviewed the status of various initiatives. We got lots of feedback on ways that the organization can help not only the district chiefs, but our fire services personnel. Things around, better, easier access to email, help with their personal devices and how they can use those personal devices to communicate back and forth with the county. So it was a very positive meeting. I think it was well received by the district chiefs. I learned a lot through the process that came out of that meeting, so that we have as the most productive group of fire services personnel that we can possibly have. So. That's my update, Mr. Chair. Oh, the one thing I did want to mention, and I don't want to reopen the discussion on the budget, but at the senior management team, we have been discussing alternative presentation formats for the budget. We've been, evolving our budget presentation format. I believe that we can do better. So we've been looking at a number of other municipalities who've got, what I would consider to be better presentation formats that we do. I think our presentation right now is very good, but I think we can, again, do better. So we're going to continue to flush through that with the senior management team, and hopefully we can come up with what I would call an even better budget presentation format. They feel to make decisions on the budget without going line by line through the budget. So we'll continue to work on that at the senior management team and bring something forward for this year's budget process if we can find something better. So that's my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Any comments or questions?
What is the recommendation from the CDO?
Just my update, Mr. Chair. I have no.
Just his update. Yeah, there was a recommendation that we had previously voted on already, Your Worship, but other than that, the CAO's update is the final item on the list. Welcome. Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Seeing none, we'll move into communications. There are 3 items. How would committee like to do? Receive? Counselor Goutward? Seconder, Counselor Simons? Yes, please.
I also want to comment.
Certainly. Item 10A, B, and C. We can deal with them individually. We can start with A, City of Brantford Joint.
I would request that C be dealt with separately.
Certainly. Yep.
And 10A.
Thank you. So we'll deal with them all separately. Item A, City of Brantford Joint Infrastructure Program to widen County Road 18. Councillor Goutward?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, the city of Brantford wanted to grow, and they grew in the Tula Heights area, and Phelps Road was included in that growth, which is really an extension of County Road 18, just past the stoplights. And I'm not in favor of the County of Brant taxpayers paying for Phelps Road to be expanded when they own it now. We're not asking them to help with our road projects out on Watts Pond Road, or help rebuild Cockshut Road, or whatever. And so, in my opinion, if they want to expand County Road 18, because they need to service the southwest area of the city of Brantford, where Empire have built thousands of homes, then that's their project, and they should pay for it, not our taxpayers. That's all I have to say for now.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Coleman, please.
I'm going to move for deferral on this, and the reason for I'm moving for deferral is that it should be referred after this municipal election.
That's 10A, City of Brantford Joint Infrastructure. That's 10A, correct, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions on that one? Councillor Chambers, please.
Just for clarification, these are just notices that they've sent us of their resolutions. They're not asking us to endorse those resolutions. And that's what Brian is basically saying, that refer the requests to after, okay. Because otherwise you just receive the communications.
Correct. There's a
So it
motion on the
implies that
floor.
we receive the communications and defer the requests till after the election. That's
All in favor? Yes. Of the deferral. Opposed? Thank you. B, City of Brantford Joint Industrial Park. Comments, questions? Move to receive. Oh, Councillor Miller, please.
No, and this one, yeah, I'll move to receive, because I think they're going to direct their staff to continue discussions.
Okay, Councillor Coleman. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Opposed? Carried. C, CN Rail request for resolution of support of Railway Safety Week, September 23rd, 29th. Councillor Simons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to pass this resolution seeking a seconder. I think it's important that we support our railway lines, and that we make it known to the public that railway is a safe, but we need to make it aware to the public that it's very safe.
As long as the junction doesn't fall apart in 2 more weeks, so
I'm
I'll be
hoping. It's
supportive
a
of it as
wonderful
well.
track right now. They've done a great job, but I'm hoping.
Mayor Eddy?
We're looking at one crossing only, and there are many crossings in the county of Brant. And I would like to point out, I think everyone should read, and I hope, and perhaps you have, read the resolution on the back of the sheet. And it says, we're Operation Lifesaver is a public partnership whose aim is to work with the rail industry, governments, police services, the media, and other agencies and the public to raise all public awareness and to save lives in the next part. Now, We are not trying to save lives. We are doing it of our own initiative on the overpass on number 2 highway on the east side of Paris. We are forcing people to go out into the traveled portion of a road simply because we approached CNN and they would not have a thing to do with talking to us much. They did come forward and they said, no, you have to design the tunnel. Well, it's not going to be our tunnel. We have no information as to how it should be designed. But we are forcing people out into the traffic. Now, I'll tell you, there's nothing more dangerous than that. And one day, I think, but that I don't predict the future, but if the railway can put a cattle underpass, railway underpass on number 5 highway in 1932, I don't know why we can't do something about this. And I don't think we went high enough. You know, it needs a meeting with the president or a resolution to the president, and it should be. We need to point out the dangerous situation that we have with that overpass on number 5 and beg assistance, because they've got all kinds of money that they're doing safety. They build all kinds of overpasses, or several in the county of Brant, on an ongoing basis. This is important from safety, in my view, and I think instead of passing this resolution, we should have a resolution requesting CN to look at this matter and assist us with providing a proper, safe, pedestrian underpass for citizens that are forced out into a roadway, an arterial road that is getting busier every time I come through there, and I come through several times a day on occasion.
Councillor Simons?
Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Chair, could I have clarification? I believe there was a statement made that this is not just about one crossing in Paris.
It's ours.
It's all kinds of crossings in the county, and if there's other crossings that need to be repaired, let's bring them forward. But this is a general resolution that says we're supporting the railway system. I mean,
It says
I
we're trying to
understand-
save lives.
I understand where Mr. Mayor's coming from, but this is generally, it's not specifically for the underpass.
Councillor Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'm definitely in support of rail safety. It's huge, especially with the tracks and the trains that we have going through our county. I also agree with the mayor in the sense that what we're having our folks doing out here on Highway 2, you know, touch wood, we've been so lucky that nobody has been hurt on that. What I'm thinking here is maybe this Rail Safety Week might be the forum to push that forward to say, we're not only talking rail safety as in stay off the rails, but we're also talking rail safety as in we have a situation here.
Thank you.
You know, so I think we can use this
That's the point.
as our, you know, as an additional push it home type thing. What a better way to do it? They're talking Rail Safety Week. We've got a concern here. There it is. So I am in support of this, and I feel it's a good opportunity for us to bring those concerns to CN Rail, because they're definitely not going to snuff us off if there's a bunch of people talking there about Safety Week, right?
Go hand in hand. Councillor Miller, then Councillor Gatward.
Mr. Chair, very quickly, I appreciate what Mayor Eddy says. CP Rail on Warncliffe Drive Road in London. Yes. Beautiful pedestrian tunnels underneath there. So I would gladly support the mayor's motion if he were to make it, say, last week, at the September council meeting, which will happen during the Rail Safety Week. So I like Councillor Pierce's idea. Maybe we make a concerted effort to push that through.
Councillor Atwood? Thank you, Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and yes, I think that's an excellent idea, Councillor Miller. And Mayor Eddy, I agree that we should send a separate resolution along with this one that we approve to the author of the letter, one Stephen Covey, who is the Chief of Police and Chief Security Officer for CN Corporate Services. And we have this nice letter from him saying that they want to save lives, promote rail safety, and what better way to introduce our issue to him by approving this and sending our own new resolution along with it to have work done where we need it. One suggestion for the clerk, it does say in the last whereas that as requested City Council, we can change that to County Council, and then I would support it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and you know, I had to laugh a bit when I saw that safety thing from CN because I think I brought this up about a year ago at Public Works about putting a tunnel on the side of the tracks for pedestrians to walk under, and I think some of our staff went and met with CN once and came back and said they're not interested in even talking to us, and then Works wants to put a walk area across that way underneath that area for people to cross safely. And I'll tell you what, we're right on the corner Consolidated there, where trucks are coming out every day with Tiger Cat equipment on it, tractor trailers, coming and going. And my concern is exactly that. You get two tractor trailers going under that bridge at the same time, if you're a pedestrian, I don't care what you got there, your hamburger. So my biggest concern is, if we can utilize this to go after them, let's do it.
Yeah.
But I brought this up a year ago at Public Works. Thank you. Councillor Simon.
If I may add to that, Mr. Chair, I think they did speak with CN, and they found out that because there's a gas area there of pipes and whatnot, it's unable to be done on that side. So they switched to the other side, the south side, and they did talk about putting an underpass on the south side. I don't know where it went from there, except there was money involved in doing a study to figure out where we haven't heard any more. Thinking of on the south side of the Dundas Street East.
I can't talk about that. I don't know anything about that. Mr. Bradley?
Mr. Chair, I can very quickly recap what happened. So the mayor and the former CAO and I had a meeting with CN, and they said, oh, we're very serious about this. And so then we met with them further, and then they basically said, yeah, if you want to design something and give it to us for approval, you can happily pay for the solution. So we brought a resolution forward to Public Works Committee to basically do that. It was declined, and we were told to start to lobby CN, which we've tried to do, and B, come up with an alternative solution. So we brought forward an alternative solution that basically shrink some lanes and paint some lines, and you know, it's certainly not an optimum solution, but it is far superior than the status quo, and not nearly as what the mayor said and others have said is proper tunnels through that. So that's where it stands. Again, it was brought forward to Public Works Committee. It was declined because it's an enormous amount of money. I think the consensus of Public Works Committee is that CN should be paying for this. Their contention is that we can certainly pay for it if we feel it's important. So that's the recap of where it has been, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Councilor. It's not like this is a sideline. This is the main line, and it's the trains that go through there daily.
Councilor Pierce?
And what's being moved.
If something were to happen to that bridge, who would have to pay for it? Wouldn't be the county. It would be CN, I would assume.
I would have no idea on that.
It is their bridge.
It's their bridge.
It is their bridge, Mr. Chair. Yep.
It's their bridge. It's not. It's outdated.
Any other comments on this, how we would like to look at this? Now, we're talking here about request resolution for support of Railway Safety Week. I believe we all support Safety Railway Week, there's no question there. However, you could piggyback it later and say, you know, we want to go back after this through Public Works, as we had started with, and drive it back through there. There's no direct or indirect bearing. Councillor Chambers. You like the addendum to that, Your Worship, to that motion?
We're dealing with the concern.
Correct. Councillor Pierce.
Just a question, are we able to have that by safety week? Because that's the week that it
Could be done overnight.
Well, our next meeting, it could be approved by the time of our next CDC meeting, if we do it one cycle on the next CDC meeting, have it ready for then.
You're absolutely right, I think everybody supports it, but in the same sense, if they want to support safety by rail, let's look at the whole picture.
Clerk, Madam Clerk?
Well, as the motion reads, I mean, presumably the resolution will be prepared for consideration at September Public Works, and then would be presented during Rail Safety Week, which is our council meeting, so.
Perfect. So you know what the motion is. Any questions, comments before we put the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Matters referred by council, there is no other business, there is none. Motion to go in camera, please. Councillor Chambers or Coleman and Councillor Pierce, all in favor? We'll go in camera.